Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be making over these side tables. They have been sitting in my garage for a long time and I am finally getting around to even looking at them. I never even looked at them when I got them. They were given to me by someone my father-in-law knew, so I knew they were in really good condition and I didn't really have to check them over very well, but I didn't know that they had this paper stuff on the bottom of the majority of the drawers. We will deal with that after I take a good look at these side tables. I just started with the first one and took out the drawers and then vacuumed the inside to get any dust that could be lingering. Like I said, they've been sitting in my garage for quite a while. I was really hoping that the other drawers weren't going to have the liners, but of course only one of them didn't have the liners. And then I found some bras and some socks, and if only it was some gold or some cash. I haven't found that yet. Once I was all done vacuuming out, I dealt with the liners in the drawers, and I just grabbed my carbide scraper. It was the first thing that I saw, and I said, this will work just fine. So I just kind of used it to pry up the liners in order to rip them off. They weren't too stuck. It just was really hard to peel them up when I'm wearing gloves because it's cold out in the garage. We are in winter right now. So I was not taking those gloves off, but the carbide scraper worked just fine to peel it up. If you're having trouble removing your liners, you could try some Goo Gone or something like that to be able to get rid of any adhesive that might be left over. Once I have all of the drawer liners removed, I clean everything with some simple green all-purpose cleaner. And I like to use some really hot water just because I feel like it cleans it better. And then after that, I wipe it down with some clean water to get rid of any residue that might be left over. If you don't do that, you can end up having trouble with your paint adhering. So you just really want to make sure that you clean it really well and then wipe it down with clean water really well. While I was cleaning, I noticed that this drawer slide was just a little bit broken, so we will have to deal with that. But luckily it wasn't too bad and I didn't have to replace the whole thing. And when you're cleaning, you want to make sure you're cleaning inside and out. Even though you're not painting the inside or the back of anything, usually it is always a good idea to give everything a really good cleaning. Once everything dries, I sand it down. I am actually using 120 grit for this. The only reason I'm using 120 versus 220 is because there is a lot of texture from whoever had painted this before. It was not a good job, so I wanted to make sure to smooth everything out as much as possible. A part of me was almost going to sand the top of the table because I was looking at the wood and I was like, ooh, I could maybe stain it, but it's pretty far gone and I think it's veneer, so I don't think I would be able to salvage it. So I am going to be painting these tables, but I almost was going to attempt it and I said I don't want to waste my time. Once I've sanded a certain area as much as I can with the orbital sander, I'll go in and just hand sand in the cracks where I can't reach with the orbital sander. If you want your paint to adhere and last as long as possible, you want to make sure you're scuff sanding every single spot that you can reach. If you don't sand in an edge, your paint might end up start flaking in that specific area because it didn't adhere as well as the other areas where you did scuff sand. I waited until there was a nice day out where it wasn't too cold in the garage, so that way I could use this Gorilla Glue to make the drawer slide properly dry. Glue will not dry if it is too cold out, and we had a couple weird days where it was like 10 plus degrees even though we're in the middle of winter. So I took advantage and I didn't lug this inside in order to do this. I was able to just keep it out in the garage and just use it as a clamp. I was a little worried that it wasn't going to stick because it's kind of in an awkward spot where there's not really much area for the glue to go, but I put as much as I could and wiped all the excess and it seemed to work. So I'm happy that I didn't have to replace this. Now these drawers had so many little spots. I don't know why there were so many spots on every single one of the drawers. I had to use some wood filler, and this is new to me, wood filler. I've never used this before, but every time I go and use the wood filler that I typically get, it ends up drying on me so quick. So I thought maybe a tube would last longer. We will see. I don't usually end up going through a whole thing just because I don't refinish as many things as I did before having a baby. So we'll see how long this Gorilla Wood Glue or wood filler lasts. And I was a little worried that it wasn't going to work very well because it's very grainy, but it actually dried and did a really good job. It was easy to sand, so far so good. This is the first time using it, so I'll keep you posted in, the next 6 months when I post my next one if I get around to it. After the wood filler dried, I just sanded everything by hand. I did a really thin coat, so I didn't want to use the orbital sander and then end up messing it up and having to refill, even though I did have to refill a couple. It really wasn't too bad. Like I said, this wood filler actually worked pretty well, and because I'm hand sanding, I like to hold the shop vac just to get any dust. I try to limit the amount of dust in this very dusty garage as much as I can. Once all the sanding was done, you want to wipe away all of the dust. I just use a damp rag. Typically I'll have 2 just to make sure that I'm getting rid of all the dust. And if you're not sure that all the dust is gone, sometimes it looks and feels like it's gone, but if you rub your hand over top of the surface, you'll end up seeing that there's a ton of dust all over your hands. And then I did notice in the cracks I was having a really hard time getting dust that was just pushed into the cracks. So I just grabbed a paintbrush that was out in the garage. I don't plan on using it before, like I'll wash it and then use it, but I just used the paintbrush to get into some of the cracks to get that dust out of there, because if you paint over top of that dust, that's just not going to be good and your paint's not going to adhere again. You want to make sure you're doing everything in your power to have the paint adhere properly. We are finally getting around to priming this, and I'm using Kills primer. It is a water-based primer that I had tinted. I wish I had tinted it a little bit darker because you can't even tell the difference when I'm painting this on. It still looks kind of white, kind of almost baby bluey, but that's a note for next time. Make sure that if you do get tinted primer, have them tint it really dark, especially if you plan on doing dark colors. While the primer was drying, I dealt with the knobs, which I planned on keeping. I know they're kind of funky looking, and probably not everyone's taste. Not really my taste, to be honest, but I thought that it kind of gave it a little bit of character, and I didn't want to get rid of all the patina, so I just used some soap and gave them a good scrubbing, which did make them look a little bit brighter, a little nicer, but still, like I said, kept that patina, and I thought that it would kind of look good with the color that I chose, and I actually really like how it looks. Like I said, maybe it would look better with a different set of knobs, but I hate throwing out knobs or giving them to the Goodwill. Then who's going to really use them? They just sit around, so I might as well just keep them on the piece, because I thought it actually turned out pretty good. So if you watch the cedar chest that I had refinished a while ago, I used this Emerald Sherwin-Williams paint in Anchors Aweigh, and I wasn't a huge fan of how the blue kind of came out. It didn't look as dark as the paint swatch that I had, so I decided to mix two paints that I had that are the exact same brand and everything, just a different color. And so the gray color is actually what I used on my kitchen cabinets, and so I mixed a bunch of that paint in with the Anchors Aweigh, and I got the color that I wanted, which I was really happy about. I ended up putting way more than how little you see I did there. I ended up putting a lot in for me to get the color that I liked, and so now it's just kind of a really deep navy color. Once I was happy with how it was looking, I was ready to paint. So when you're using a roller, you want to make sure that you are fully saturating the roller. You don't want it to be dripping in paint, but you want to make sure it's fully saturated, so when you are rolling it, you're not getting paint, no paint, paint, no paint. You're getting paint the entire way. So the way I like to use a roller is I'll usually unload the paint that's on the roller on the front face of whatever I'm painting, and then I do the sides. So I do the sides after I do the front because there's less paint on the roller, so less of a chance of getting drips or buildup around the edges. If you've watched my videos before, you know I am a paintbrush hater. I hate paintbrushes. I'll use them if I have to. I had this one that was already dirty from mixing the paint, so I just used it to get into the cracks. But ultimately, I just love using a roller. I will use a roller as much as possible to get into any little area I need to. I typically don't even have to use a paintbrush, but I only used it because I had it. It was already dirty. But I find paintbrushes just leave so much texture. I have way better luck with only using a roller. When you're using both a brush and a roller, you can get spots where there's paint buildup, so no matter what you're using, just make sure you're double checking, even triple checking, because suddenly you don't think that there's going to be a big blob of paint somewhere, and all of a sudden it's there. So just make sure that you do double, triple check before the paint ends up drying, because it's way more of a pain in the butt to sand off a spot that has dried. Because this paint is quite dark, it can take multiple coats to get full coverage, and I actually only had to do 3 coats. So if you watch my cedar chest video, I think I had mentioned I had to do like 5 coats to get full coverage. I don't know what the heck was going on with this paint. Maybe adding the gray paint to it helped it get better coverage, because I only had to do 3, which was way better than when I used this paint last time. I was very happy about it. Now, if you want a really, really, really smooth finish, you can sand in between coats. Maybe I was just feeling lazy, or maybe I thought that this paint is really good. I really like this paint. No top coat required. Levels out beautifully. I didn't feel like it needed to be sanded in between coats, so I opted to not do it. But again, if you're looking for like an ultra smooth coat or an ultra smooth finish, definitely sand in between coats, wiping away the dust in between. But this paint is great. If you have not used it, give it a try for yourself and let me know what you think. We are at the home stretch. We're using Dixie Belle's Orange Grove. Because I sanded the inside of the drawers, I just want to freshen it up and reseal the drawers. So make sure you don't add too much of this. A little bit does go a long way. So you just want to make sure that you're rubbing it in really, really well and getting really even coverage. And then you can wipe away any of the excess with a clean cloth or a rag. Because these are wooden drawer slides, I'm just taking some clear wax and putting it all over the drawer slides to make the drawer slide in and out a lot more smoother. I've got the knobs back in the drawers. I'm sliding the drawers in and out to make sure that it's nice and smooth, and we are ready to have another look at the before. And now here's the after.